The war did not begin with thunder or fire. It began with silence, the kind that makes even the strongest warrior uneasy. The alien world of Darath had been scarred by centuries of conflict. Its mountains were broken, its rivers poisoned, and its skies darkened by smoke. Across the shattered plains, armies of alien species gathered, each one stronger, faster, and older than humankind. Yet all of them shared the same failure. At the heart of Darath stood the sword. No one remembered who had forged it. Some believed it was created by the first gods. Others whispered it was left behind by beings from another dimension. The blade shone with blue fire, buried deep into the black stone ground, impossible to move. Kings, generals, warlords, and sorcerers had all tried to lift it. None had succeeded. To the aliens of Darath, the sword was more than a weapon, it was a test. Whoever lifted it would claim destiny itself, but destiny never came. For generations, the sword remained where it stood, mocking every attempt. Armies died, rulers were forgotten, yet the sword glowed, waiting. And then came the humans. Elias was not the strongest of his kind. He was not a king, nor a great soldier. He was simply a survivor, dragged into the war by chance. His ship had crashed when the fighting between alien fleets tore through the sky. Alone and wounded, he stumbled through the battlefield, searching for water, searching for a reason to keep walking. His armor was cracked, his face bruised, but his spirit, though tired, refused to break. From the shadows of the ruins, alien eyes followed him. They whispered to each other in voices sharp as knives. Another human, one spat. Weak, fragile, lost. Others only watched, their faces unreadable. To them, humans were little more than sparks bright for a moment, then gone forever. Yet, Elias did not notice. His eyes were fixed on the sword. The blade stood alone, glowing like a fallen star, its light reaching even through the smoke and the dust. He felt something stir in his chest when he saw it, as if the sword called to him. His steps grew slower, his breath heavier, yet he did not stop. Around him, the ground shook with distant battles. Alien legions clashed in thunderous roars, their machines tearing into the earth, their weapons cracking the sky. But here, in the small ruined valley, time seemed different. The sword made silence heavier, the air colder, the shadows longer. Elias fell to his knees before it. His hand trembled as he reached forward. The aliens hidden in the rocks held their breath. They had seen this moment many times before. Warriors far greater than this human had tried. All had failed. The sword burned their hands, broke their strength, shattered their pride. It was almost amusing to watch another fool attempt it, but Elias did not carry pride. He carried only the need to survive, to rise, to fight again. He wrapped his hand around the hilt. For the briefest moment, the world itself seemed to hesitate. The blue light pulsed. The sword hummed, a sound deep enough to be felt in the bones. Elias gasped as a wave of energy rushed through him. It was not pain, but it was not gentle either. It was like fire and ice mixed together, testing him, searching him, weighing his worth. He thought of Earth, of the faces he had left behind. He thought of battles lost and friends buried. He thought of the silence of space, of how small humans seemed compared to the stars, and yet how they always kept moving forward. The sword answered. The stone around the blade cracked. The light grew brighter, blinding. Elias's arms shook as if the weight of worlds pulled against him. The aliens watching widened their eyes. They had seen the sword resist titans, sorcerers, and monsters, but now it trembled. Now it moved. And then slowly, impossibly, it lifted. Elias rose to his feet, the sword in his hand, its glow spilling across the ruined valley. For the first time in history, the weapon had chosen. The silence shattered. Whispers turned to screams. Some aliens roared in rage, others in awe, others in fear. None could deny what had just happened. The human had done what no alien could, and deep in the shadows, a figure with blue skin and silver eyes smiled faintly, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. The blue glow of the sword spread across the ruined valley, casting long shadows on the broken rocks. Elias stood trembling, his chest rising and falling as though the very air had turned heavier. The blade hummed in his hand alive, and its power seemed to flow into his veins. Around him, the watching aliens broke their silence. Some fell back in fear, others growled and hissed. To them, this was impossible. For ages they had tried and failed. Giants, sorcerers, warlords, all rejected. Yet this fragile human had lifted the weapon in a single desperate attempt. The alien soldier stepped forward, his armor shining with spikes of iron. His voice was low and cruel. "Put it down, human. You do not know what you hold." Elias did not answer. He could barely hear the alien over the roaring in his head. It was not a sound from the battlefield, but from the sword itself. It whispered to him in a language he could not understand, yet somehow it sank deep into his mind. Visions flashed before his eyes, cities burning, stars collapsing, armies kneeling. The sword was more than metal. It was memory, history, and destiny bound together. The spiked alien raised his weapon and pointed it at Elias. "The sword belongs to no human." Before Elias could react, the sword moved on its own. A surge of light burst from the blade, striking the alien back with a force like a storm. The soldier crashed into the rocks, his armor splitting, smoke rising from the cracks. Gasps and cries spread through the crowd of hidden watchers. The truth was undeniable. The sword had accepted the human. Elias staggered, almost dropping the weapon. His hands burned, but the fire felt strangely welcome, as if it belonged inside him. He looked at the blade, and for a moment, fear filled his chest. He did not want this power. He had not asked for it. But now he carried it, and the world itself seemed to watch. From the shadows, the blue-skinned woman stepped forward. Her silver eyes glowed faintly, and her long hair moved like strands of liquid night. The other aliens shrank from her, whispering her name in dread. She was known as Serenia, one of the last of an ancient race that had lived on Darath long before the wars began. To some, she was a prophet. To others, a curse. Serenia's gaze never left Elias. "So," she said softly, her voice carrying over the noise of the battlefield. "It is true. The sword has chosen you." Elias tightened his grip, unsure whether she was friend or foe. "I don't know what this means," he said, his voice rough. Serenia tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "It means the war will change. It means every army in this land will hunt you." The sword was not just a prize, human. It was a throne waiting for a ruler. Behind her, more alien soldiers gathered, their weapons drawn, their faces twisted in anger and fear. Some demanded the sword be returned. Others shouted that the human should be killed before the prophecy could be fulfilled. The valley began to shake with their voices. Elias felt the weight of their stares. He was a stranger here, lost and alone. But in his hand was something greater than he could understand. For the first time, he felt the world bending toward him, waiting for his choice. The alien surged forward. The sword lit up again. Elias raised it without thought, and the ground split apart in a glowing crack, forcing the soldiers to fall back. The power was overwhelming, frightening, and yet he knew it responded to his will. He did not control the blade completely, but it listened to him in a way it had never listened to anyone else. Serenia's silver eyes shone brighter. "If you want to live," she said quickly, "you must follow me. They will not stop until your blood weights the ground." Elias hesitated, glancing at her, then at the armies circling like wolves. He did not trust her, but he trusted them even less. With no other choice, he nodded. Serenia turned and moved swiftly through the ruins, her figure gliding with almost unnatural grace. Elias followed, the sword still glowing in his hand. Behind them, the valley filled with shouts and screams as the alien armies gathered their courage to chase. For the first time in countless years, the sword was no longer buried. It was alive again, and the human carrying it had just become the center of the greatest storm this world had ever known. In the distance, deep beneath the mountains, something ancient stirred awake. The ruins stretched endlessly, broken towers and shattered stone walls like the bones of a dead giant. Elias stumbled after Serenia, the blue-skinned woman, his grip tight around the glowing sword. The blade hummed with energy, guiding his steps as if it wanted him to keep moving forward. Every shadow seemed alive, every echo felt like footsteps behind them. Serenia moved like a phantom, silent and graceful, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. She did not look back often, but when she did, her gaze carried both urgency and calculation. Elias knew she was not helping him out of kindness. She had her own reasons, but he didn't have the luxury to question them now. Behind them, distant war cries rose like thunder. The alien armies were gathering, chasing, refusing to accept what had just happened. To them, Elias was an insult. A fragile creature from a lesser species had done what their mightiest warriors could not. His survival was now a threat to their pride and power. The ground shook under heavy footsteps. War machines crawled over the ruins, their glowing eyes sweeping across the valley. Metallic wings flapped above, carrying alien scouts armed with burning weapons. Elias's chest tightened. The whole world seemed to be hunting him. Where are we going? He demanded, his voice rough with exhaustion. Serenia finally stopped at the edge of a broken bridge that hung over a deep canyon. To the only place where they cannot reach you, she said. The ancient vaults beneath the mountains. The sword has awoken something. If you wish to survive, you must learn what it means. Elias tightened his grip on the blade. Its light flickered, almost as if it heard her words. And if I don't want this? Her lips curved in a faint smile. Then you will die before the sun sets. Before he could respond, a roar split the air. From the other side of the canyon, alien warriors appeared, armored giants with tusks of iron and glowing red eyes. They carried weapons forged from living flame, their steps making the bridge tremble. Behind them came more soldiers, their voices united in a furious chant. They found us, Elias muttered, his throat dry. Serenia drew a slender blade of her own, black as night and etched with glowing runes. Of course they did. The sword is like a beacon. Every creature within 100 leagues can feel it now. You must fight, human. You must show them why the sword chose you. Elias looked at the advancing army and felt his body tighten with fear. He was just one man. He had no army, no shield, no plan. But then he looked at the sword. Its glow wrapped around his hand, warm and alive like a pulse. He remembered the way it had cracked the ground, the way it had thrown soldiers aside as if they were paper. The bridge shuddered as the alien warriors charged. Elias raised the sword. The blade screamed with light. A wave of blue fire burst outward, rushing across the bridge like a storm. The first line of warriors was thrown into the canyon, their roars vanishing into the abyss. The second line hesitated, their eyes wide with fear, but pride drove them forward. They swung their flaming weapons, striking at Elias with all their strength. The sword moved faster than his eyes. His arms reacted as though guided by something greater. Sparks of light clashed against flame, the air filling with smoke and thunder. Elias cut through their ranks, every swing leaving trails of glowing energy. His body screamed with exhaustion. But the sword carried him, as if lending him strength beyond his own limits. Still, there were too many. The bridge shook as more soldiers poured onto it. One of the giants slammed his weapon into the ground, breaking the stone and forcing Elias back. His knees buckled, and for a moment, the weight of the sword felt unbearable. Serenia leapt forward, her dark blade flashing. She moved with terrifying speed, cutting down warriors before they could reach Elias. Her eyes blazed like silver fire, her movements sharp and merciless. She was not fighting to save him, she was fighting to protect the sword. Together, they held the line, the human and the alien woman side by side. But the bridge was cracking under the chaos. Pieces of stone fell into the canyon below. The aliens roared, determined to tear Elias apart before he could escape. With one final strike, Elias drove the sword into the bridge. A blinding shockwave exploded outward, tearing the stone apart. The entire bridge collapsed, dragging the charging army into the abyss. The screams echoed through the canyon until only silence remained. Elias fell to his knees, gasping for breath, the sword still glowing in his hand. His body trembled, his vision blurred, but he was alive. Serenia stood beside him, her silver eyes locked on the sword. "You are not ready," she said softly, "but the sword does not care. It has chosen. And now the whole world will burn because of it." Elias looked up at her, confusion and fear twisting inside him. "Why me?" he whispered for the first time. Serenia's expression softened, though her voice remained cold. "Because sometimes the weakest hands carry the greatest strength. And sometimes destiny chooses the one who least wants it." Above them, the sky cracked with thunder. Far away, deep in the alien lands, horns of war began to sound. The hunt for the human had only just begun. The mountain path was steep, carved long ago by hands that no longer walked the world. Elias followed Serenia, his legs aching, his breath heavy, the sword glowing faintly at his side. The battle on the bridge still echoed in his mind. The screams, the fire, the way the sword had unleashed its power without warning. He could still feel it burning inside him, as if the blade was not just a weapon, but a living force. Serenia moved ahead with her usual silent grace, her dark cloak brushing against the stone walls. The mountain swallowed them in shadows, its jagged peaks clawing at the storm-filled sky. Behind them, the horns of war still sounded, carried across the valleys like thunder. The armies of Darath would not rest now. The moment the human had lifted the sword, the world had changed. Elias finally spoke, his voice strained. "How far?" "Far enough that even the hunters will hesitate," Serenia replied without turning. "But not far enough to save you." "Not yet." Her words did little to comfort him. He tightened his grip on the sword, though it seemed to grow heavier with every step. At times, it felt like it wanted him to stop, as if it were testing whether he was strong enough to carry its burden. The path twisted into a cavern, its walls glowing faintly with veins of crystal. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, pulsing with dim light as they passed. Elias slowed, brushing his fingers against one. It felt warm, almost alive. "What is this place?" he asked. Serenia finally turned, her silver eyes meeting his. "A grave and a warning." Before he could ask more, a sound rose behind them, claws scraping against stone, voices like growls in the dark. Elias spun around, sword raised. Shadows flickered along the cavern walls, moving unnaturally fast. "They followed us," he muttered. Serenia's expression did not change. "Of course they did. The sword calls to all things, not just armies. Some creatures hear its song louder than others. From the darkness they came. Not soldiers, but hunters' beasts twisted by war and time, their bodies a mixture of flesh and steel. Their eyes glowed red, their teeth dripping with smoke. They moved on 4 legs, then shifted to 2, their shapes unstable, as if torn between forms. Elias's heart pounded. "What are they?" "Remnants," Serenia said quietly. "Born from the first wars. Things that should have died long ago. But the sword keeps them alive." The creatures lunged. Elias swung the sword instinctively. A wave of blue light cut through the air, striking one beast and throwing it against the wall. but another slammed into him from the side, its claws raking across his armor. He stumbled, nearly dropping the blade. The creature snapped its jaws at his throat. Before it could strike, Serenya's black blade flashed, severing its head in a single motion. She moved with cold precision, every strike clean, every step measured. Her silver eyes glowed brighter, as if the presence of the sword awakened something inside her. "Do not falter," she said sharply, pushing Elias back to his feet. "The sword will not carry you forever. You must learn to carry it." Elias tightened his grip, forcing his fear down. The beasts circled, their growls echoing through the cavern. He swung again, this time not with desperation, but with focus. The sword answered, its light surging in rhythm with his heartbeat. His strike split two creatures in half, their bodies dissolving into ash. The battle raged in the narrow tunnel, claws against steel, light against shadow. Elias fought beside Serenya, every movement clumsy compared to her graceful strikes, but the sword made up for his weakness. With each clash, he felt it binding to him, its whispers growing louder in his mind. At last, the final beast fell, dissolving into smoke that drifted into the cracks of the cavern walls. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Elias's ragged breathing. His arms ached, his chest burned, but he was alive. Serenya sheathed her blade and studied him carefully. "You are learning," she said, "but you are still untested." Elias leaned on the sword, his voice rough. "Tested? I nearly died back there." Her silver eyes glimmered faintly. "And yet you live, that is what matters." The sword chose you not for strength, but for survival. That is the gift of your kind. You endure. He stared at her, uncertain whether her words were praise or warning. They continued deeper into the cavern. The walls grew narrower, the crystals brighter, until the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a circular platform of black stone, covered in glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. Serenya stepped onto it, her voice softer now. "This is where you will see the truth." Elias followed, the sword humming louder in his hand. The runes flared to life, filling the chamber with blinding light. The air shook, and visions spilled. Across the walls, battles from ages past, gods forging the sword, alien kings kneeling in defeat, and shadows of worlds collapsing into fire. Elias's breath caught in his throat. He realized the sword was not just a weapon. It was history. It was judgment, and now it had chosen him. Asterisk. The visions on the cavern walls burned like fire across Elias's mind. He staggered, clutching the sword, while the images swirled around him, worlds torn apart. Armies kneeling, rulers crowned and broken. The sword had seen ages of war, and it carried them all within its steel. Serenya stood calm at the center of the glowing platform, her silver eyes reflecting the visions. She looked as though she had seen them before, perhaps many times. Elias turned to her, his voice raw. "What is this? Why are you showing me this?" Her gaze softened, though her words carried the weight of stone. "Not I, the sword shows you. It carries memory. It carries truth. Every hand that touched it, every war fought for it, every soul judged by it. Now those memories are yours." Elias pressed his palm against his temple, trying to steady himself. "I'm no king, no hero. I don't want this." Serenya stepped closer, her presence sharp as a blade. "Want does not matter. The sword has chosen. That means the war itself has chosen, and now all of Darath will turn its eyes to you. Some will see a savior, most will see an enemy." Her words struck deep. He had been a soldier once, but never a leader. He had known loss, hunger, fear. He had never thought himself special, just another human surviving in a cruel universe. And yet, the sword had lifted for him when it had rejected thousands before. He could speak, the visions shifted again. A great shadow fell across the walls. A figure cloaked in darkness appeared, taller than any warrior, eyes burning red, his hand reaching for the sword. Wherever he walked, armies followed and worlds crumbled. Elias felt his chest tighten. "Who is that?" Serenya's voice dropped to a whisper. "The one the aliens call the Eternal Warlord. He has hunted the sword for centuries. He believes it belongs to him, and when he learns that a human holds it, he will come. He will tear this world apart to take it." The chamber trembled, as though the sword itself reacted to her words. The light around Elias flickered. For the first time, he felt not just fear, but the weight of something far larger than himself. Serenya's hand brushed the air, calming the glow of the runes. "You must decide, Elias. You can wield the sword for yourself, claim its power, and rule as the others tried, or—" She hesitated, her silver eyes narrowing. "You can use it for something greater. Something even I do not yet see." Elias studied her face, searching for her true intent. "And what do you want from me?" A silence stretched between them. Finally, Serenya's expression cracked, showing a glimpse of sorrow hidden beneath her calm mask. "I was there when my people tried to lift it. I watched kings burn, prophets fall, armies vanish in the light. None were chosen. I thought my race had been cursed. But now I see we were only waiting for someone not born of this world." Her words unsettled him. She was no mere guide. She had carried this burden for centuries, waiting in the ruins, watching failure after failure. And now he, a lost human, had stumbled into her prophecy. The ground shook violently, cutting through his thoughts. Dust fell from the cavern ceiling. From outside, a roar thundered, louder than any before. Elias's blood ran cold. Serenya's eyes widened. "He comes." The cavern wall cracked open with an explosion of rock and fire. Shadows poured in, an army clad in black armor, their eyes burning like coals. At their front marched a giant figure, towering above them all. His face was hidden behind a mask of bone, his hands wrapped in iron. In his chest burned a red light, pulsing like a second heart. The Eternal Warlord. His voice boomed, shaking the chamber. "So, at last, the sword wakes again." His burning eyes fell on Elias. "And it chooses a human?" His laugh was deep and cruel. "Pathetic." The alien soldiers fanned out, their weapons glowing. The cavern filled with heat and smoke. Elias raised the sword instinctively, though his arms trembled. The blade glowed brighter, as if answering the challenge. Serenia stepped beside him, her black blade drawn. Her voice was low but steady. "Elias, this is not just another battle. This is the war the sword was waiting for." The Eternal Warlord raised his massive weapon, forged from black fire and steel. "Come, human. Show me why the gods mock us by giving you what belongs to me." The ground split as the two forces prepared to clash, and Elias realized with cold clarity that this was not a fight he could run from. The sword had brought him here for this moment. The true war had begun. The cavern shook as the Eternal Warlord stepped forward, his massive frame filling the chamber with shadow. His soldiers surrounded the platform, their weapons burning with crimson fire. The black stone beneath Elias's feet trembled, as though the mountain itself feared what was about to unfold. Elias gripped the sword tighter, its blue light pulsing in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. He had faced battles before, but nothing like this. The warlord's presence was crushing, a force of pure will that made the air heavy and the soul tremble. Serenia's silver eyes flickered as she whispered quickly, "Do not fight him as a soldier. Fight him as the sword demands, trust it." Elias wanted to argue, to shout that he was no chosen one, no hero, but there was no time. The Eternal Warlord lifted his enormous black blade, forged of living fire. When it struck the ground, the cavern split open, runes cracking, fire bursting from the cracks. The battle began. The warlord swung first, a strike heavy enough to break stone. Elias barely raised the sword in time. Blue and red light clashed. the sound like thunder tearing the sky. The shockwave hurled soldiers against the walls. Elias staggered but did not fall. The sword steadied him, its glow wrapping around his arms like chains of light. The warlord laughed, a sound that echoed like a storm. "You are weak, human. You are nothing." Elias gritted his teeth. "Maybe, but I'm still here." He pushed forward, forcing the warlord back a step. For a moment, the alien giant's grin faltered. The soldiers roared and charged, surrounding Elias. Blue light erupted from the sword in a wave, throwing them aside like leaves in a storm. The blade burned brighter, its whispers filling Elias's mind. "Stand, endure, rise." Serenia fought at his side, her black blade cutting through the chaos. She moved like shadow, striking with deadly precision, buying Elias the seconds he needed. But her eyes never left him. She knew the final strike would not be hers. The warlord roared again, swinging with even greater fury. Sparks filled the cavern, stone shattered, and for a moment, Elias felt his knees buckle under the force. The sword vibrated, almost too much to hold. His arms shook, his chest burned. Then he remembered. Earth, the faces of those who had fought beside him. The fragility of humankind, and yet their endless will to keep going. He was not the strongest. He was not the fastest. But humans did not stop. That was their gift. The sword answered his resolve. Its glow flared, brighter than the sun. Energy poured into Elias, filling his veins with fire and light. He lifted the blade with both hands, and for the first time, he did not feel small before. The warlord, the alien giant, swung again, his weapon crashing down like a falling star. Elias met it head-on. The two blades collided, red and blue light bursting across the cavern in a blinding explosion. Soldiers screamed and were thrown into the abyss. The stone platform cracked apart. The warlord pressed down, his strength monstrous. But Elias did not yield. He stepped forward, inch by inch, forcing the black blade back. The sword's whispers roared into a single voice inside his mind, now with a final shout. Elias drove the sword through the warlord's chest. The cavern shook as the alien giant staggered, the red glow in his body flickering wildly. His mask cracked, his eyes widening with disbelief. "A human?" His voice broke into a roar that turned into silence. The sword flared once more, then released its light in a burst that shattered the black blade and sent the eternal warlord crashing into the abyss. His army scattered, their will broken, their roars turning into screams as they fled into the darkness. Silence followed. Elias fell to his knees, the sword glowing softly in his hands. His body was shaking, every muscle screaming in pain, but he was alive. The warlord was gone. Serenia stepped forward, her silver eyes softer now. For the first time, she bowed her head. "It is done. The sword chose well." Elias looked at the weapon, its glow calmer now, almost gentle. He whispered, more to himself than to her, "I didn't win because I was stronger. I won because I couldn't give up." Serenia's lips curved into the faintest smile. "And that is why the sword will never leave you. That is the strength no alien ever understood." The rooms around the chamber dimmed, the echoes fading into silence. The war outside would rage for a while longer, but something had changed. Forever. A human had lifted the sword. A human had defeated the eternal warlord. And on the distant planet of Darath, hope was born again.